Hey guys, Luke here, and the 2020 NRL season is just about finished, and with it being finished, the top 8 is decided, the bottom 8's decided. It's just a matter of who's going to end up where in terms of position-wise. So we know the top 8 is the top 8, but it's a matter of if a team's going to get top 4 or they're going to get bottom 4. It remains to be seen. But for this video, we're going to be talking about my tier list. Now, I've gone into that tier list maker, and there's actually one already made, and it was called 2020 NRL logos or clubs or something along the lines of that. And I'm going to take the teams and I'm going to try and put them 1 to 16. Now, I don't believe you can actually place them 1 to 16, but they have little God mode and good, bad, shit, ugly, I don't know. They have some sort of tier thing like that. So I can't per se put it as 1 to 16, but you kind of get the gist of it. I'll try and do it in order. Now, before we go ahead and get into it, I just want to point out that this is just my opinion, and it's also something that I'm not really studying the ladder and going, okay, Panthers, they've come first, they've beat this team, they beat that team, yeah, they're definitely number 1. I'm also going to take into account, say a team like the Roosters, they've had quite a lot of injuries throughout the season, but once the finals come, I feel like they could really turn it on. So we can almost think of this as if it was, instead of a top 8, it'd be a top 16, and if they all had to play elimination games right now, and who I think would end up winning the comp, essentially. So just because Penrith are in first at the moment, I don't necessarily think they're the best team in the comp. I think they're the most consistent team, but doesn't mean I necessarily think they're the best team. So I'm sort of going to take into account that, who I think is the best, plus who's been the most consistent. So Penrith might well end up in the first position, but just because they finished first in the minor premiership doesn't really mean too much to me, especially considering how weird this season has been. And like I said, lots of injuries, lots of people being rested. As long as you're in the top 4, you're a chance of winning the premiership. So a lot of teams don't give a shit about actually winning the minor premiership. So I'll take that into account, but I just thought I'd point that out in case people were wondering why Penrith weren't a guaranteed number 1. Anyways, I've got the intro out of the way. Let's go ahead and get onto the tier list site. Okay, we've got it on the screen right now. I'm not going to scroll down, but you can see all the logos are there. So we've got God tier, we've got good tier, average tier, below average, and bad. So some of them I think are pretty self-explanatory, but I'm just going to go from the top row to the bottom row, purely just because it fits better on the screen. I'm super zoomed in terms of the desktop, so I'm just going to start with it. Who should we go with? I think we've got to go Broncos. They're definitely going to be in the bad category. They've been absolutely abysmal this season. In terms of the players that they have in their squad should be doing so much better than what they are. But look, the fact that they're in the battle for the wooden spoon, and quite possibly when you're seeing this could have won the wooden spoon, I think it says it all about the Broncos. The Roosters, I think you've got to go with them in... I'll go them in the God tier, just purely based on the fact that they've won 2 premierships in a row. I was contemplating them putting them in the good. I don't think they've been that dominant this season. However, I do think they're good enough in terms of going into these elimination games and the games that matter. I think they'll definitely be able to step it up, and I think the players should be ready to go. The other obvious one is Penrith. In the God tier, just a matter of, do I think the Roosters are a better overall team than Penrith? Because I kind of think they do, but then the form of the Panthers this season, it says it should be an easy one, that Panthers should be number 1. But the Roosters, I just don't know. Even a team like the Storm, I'm tempted to put them in God tier, but I think they're more like a number 1 in the good tier, because we definitely know they're capable of it. Cameron Smith, Brandon Smith for that matter, Cameron Munster, Jerome Hughes, Pappenhausen, the Bromwich brothers, I should say. They've got a phenomenal team, and we definitely know they're capable of winning a premiership. But just throughout the overall season, I feel like Panthers they've displayed a lot better form than the Storm, and also the Roosters, we know their history. We also know the Storm's history, but a lot of their history is not with the same players they've got now. So we'll have to wait and see how they go in the finals. You'd expect them to be up and about, and if the Storm end up winning the premiership, would totally not be surprised. But I'd say they're number 1 in terms of the good tier. The Eels. The Eels are a hard one, because I feel like at certain points in the season, in certain games, they've definitely been a good team. But I don't know, I feel like I'm more tempted to put them in an average team there. It sounds weird to say considering I think they're a top 4 side, but just in terms of what they've displayed, especially as of late, and I know there's always that little bit of recency bias, but Parramatta, they just haven't been good, and they haven't displayed a lot. And I think the fact that Blake Ferguson scored his first try in the last couple of weeks really says it all about Parramatta. They've been winning, but they haven't necessarily been winning well. And for a team that Blake Ferguson is such a noted try scorer, he hasn't even been scoring this season, it says that Parramatta have definitely not been playing at their best. which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing for the rest of the NRL. And for them in the finals, if they haven't even been playing that well and they're still sort of in the top 4, in the top 8, I think it says a lot about Para in terms of if they could produce. But there's too many question marks for me to put them in the good tier. Just because I feel like if we're going category-wise, we're going tier list-wise, I think there's such a difference between the Storm and the Eels, I mean, the Storm could well be in that God mode, and then the Eels pushed up to that good tier. We'll see. We'll leave it for later on. I think the Bulldogs, I'm going to have to chuck them in bad, but I'm going to put them ahead of the Broncos purely for effort levels, and also the fact that just the for and against is, I think it says it all. The Broncos in the 300s, Bulldogs in the 100s. It says it all in terms of how close games have been. So I feel like it almost is disrespectful for the Bulldogs to put them in the same category for the Broncos in terms of effort. But I mean, effort doesn't mean everything. I mean, you can have a bunch of like local league players. You're going to have lots of effort, but the skill just isn't there. And that's the same with the Bulldogs. Broncos have more skill, less effort. Bulldogs have less skill, more effort. And it just comes down to this very last round. And like I said, Broncos could have the wooden spoon by the time you're seeing this. Bulldogs could also have it. So they've got to be paired together. I think just the fact that they're both competing for it into the last round, they're in a tier by themselves. Now it just comes down to the rest of this, I don't know, tier list. I don't know where exactly to put teams. We have teams like the Dragons, who could be in the bad category as well. Or are they below average? They've shown at times throughout the season they've been okay, but probably okay at best. So that's why I'm kind of leaning towards them being in the bad category. But it's just another one where I'm looking at the Storm and the Eels and I'm saying like, yeah, they're like being a good team, but there's such like a drastic difference between Parramatta and the Storm. Same can be said between the Dragons and Bulldogs and Broncos. I feel like the Dragons at times have looked like a team that could have pushed for the 8. They just have a lot of talent, but it just kind of wasn't there throughout the whole season. Whereas the Bulldogs and Broncos, like it was never there. It was never there. The Dragons have at least displayed it a couple times in the season. I'll chuck them in below average just for now, but I don't want it to end up with like a whole bunch of average teams and then like one team in the below average, one team in the good. I'll throw in Warriors. I'll throw the Warriors ahead of the Dragons at least in that below average. I feel like, once again, another one that has a lot of passion. Been playing quite well, especially considering the circumstances. Yeah, I'd definitely list them as below average. I'd say Cowboys in the month there too. I'd say below the Warriors. I feel like the Warriors have displayed a lot. Next up, we'll go the Titans. I'll chuck them in average. I feel like they've actually had a very, very strong end to the season. Feels like as soon as they started making signings for next season and started making inroads for next season, it's really affected them this season too. Didn't really expect too much from them this season. In fact, I thought they would have been a wooden spoon contender just purely based off the last couple seasons. And it's not like they made huge signings, but I suppose the signing of a coach definitely helps. So I've chucked them there. The Raiders, they're one where it's like, do I put them in average or good? Another one where, look, if you look at their track record from this season, you can probably put them in average, but I also know what they're capable of, and I feel they're capable of being a good side. They're not going to be a top 4 side, obviously, but we're not doing that. If we were just going off the ladder, there's no point to this. There's no point. I'll just be doing 1 to 16, and you'd already know the answer to all of this. You wouldn't even bother. So I'm going to chuck the Raiders in this good category. I'd definitely have them above the Eels. I'm not sure exactly what the ladder is going into this. I haven't been looking at the ladder. But just in terms of personal preference, I think the Raiders are more likely to win a comp than Parramatta. And that's what we're going off. The Rabbitohs, at some point, I feel like could be in this good category. Find themselves in the average category as well. So it's more of like, where do you put them? And I think the fact that I'm sort of going whereabouts, and also the fact that Latrell Mitchell is injured, I feel like without him, they're no chance throughout the season, in terms of winning the comp, I should say. They're no chance for this season, which it's like, do I put them in that good category? Because, I mean, Canberra, I feel like they can win the premiership, but they're still a long shot. So are they sort of similar to the Rabbitohs? Does that mean Raiders should be an average team? Does that mean the Rabbitohs should be an average team? Look, for now, I'm going to chuck them into the average category. At times throughout the season, definitely displayed them being great. Adam Reynolds, Cody Walker, Damien Cooks, all your usual suspects have been great, but just in terms of them going on being a premiership force, I just don't see it. Same goes for the Knights. I'm not even going to put them in the average category. I feel like if the season started tomorrow, I think they'd be in that below average category. Definitely have potential with Kalyn Ponga. Whenever Kalyn Ponga is playing, they're definitely capable of winning a game. Same as Clemmer and all that sort of stuff, but they just haven't been consistent. And a lot of it is due to injuries, but it is what it is. Injuries happen. And just in terms of purely 2020, the Knights, I'm putting them in below average. Manly, man, they've been downright bad at some points. But look, I do think they are better than the Dragons at least. Do I put them above the Cowboys? I don't know. I mean, it's hard considering they have played, I feel like, most of the season without Tom Trbojevic. I think I'm going to have to put them in that below average category. I'll chuck them below Cowboys. I mean, a lot of these positions could be swapped. I'd say from probably the Cowboys, Manly and Dragons, I could swap any of those. So that leaves us with two teams. We have the Sharks and we have the Tigers. Tigers are a side, you could definitely put them in the bad category, below average. They're a weird side that I feel like they could, once again, I feel like they can definitely beat all these sides in the below average and the bad category. Even the average sides, they are capable of beating them, but it's like I look at them and I just, for some reason, you see the Tigers and I just feel like, oh yeah, no, they're crap. But results-wise, ladder-wise, they're probably not that bad. I'll chuck them in above the Cowboys. Definitely in the below average category, in my opinion. I don't know if I want to reshuffle any of these at this point. I'll have a good look, a proper look, and I'll have a proper think about it. But yeah, for now, that's what we're going to go with. We've got the Sharks, the last team. Where do we put them? They're not in the God tier. They're not in the good tier. Are they in the average tier? The below average. I mean, once again, they've been swapping and changing, and the halves. I think they've got to be in the average tier. It's just, do I think they're above Eels or? Oh, I don't know. I'm gonna have to put them after Eels. I feel like Eels have at least displayed form where you thought, yeah, they could win a premiership. And that's why also I'm looking at the Eels side. I'm like, do I put them above the Rabbitohs? The Rabbitohs, while they've been good, I've never sort of thought, oh, yeah, they could win a premiership this year. Like, it's always been like, oh, well, they're actually playing pretty good, but you know, we've already got Panthers, Roosters, Storm. You know, we've got a couple of those teams. You know, I don't think they can win it. Whereas Parramatta at times throughout this season, I think they've definitely been contenders, especially in the media's eyes. That's probably more what I'm saying. You know, they've had some big wins over some big teams. It's just a matter of, I don't know, throughout the whole season, I feel like Rabbitohs have been more consistent. I'm not even sure where they ended up on the ladder. Rabbitohs could well be under the Eels, and they probably are. I don't even know. Actually, they're probably, one of them's top 4 for sure. It's either Eels or Rabbitohs. The Raiders aren't in top 4, as far as I know. I'll leave it at that. In terms of this, look, a part of me wants to put the Roosters as the number 1 team. It's one of those ones where I feel like if the Roosters play, look, a team that they'd put out on grand final day up against Panthers, I feel like the Roosters would get them. But I mean, I'm thinking of the Roosters with Cronk, and instead they've had Flanagan, they've had Lachlan Lamb, Hutchison, but they've also been playing super under strength too, and still getting wins, and still getting good wins. Like last week, they didn't even play Tedesco, and they had such a good win. They've been resting players. I don't know. I feel like the Roosters have just been coasting, and they're waiting for the finals. But just because no team has done the three-peat, I don't know. But then at the same time, I think, what was it? They were the first team since like 2000 or something, since the team had done back-to-back. So it's definitely hard to do. But there's just for that reason that you're like, well, they can't go through. They can't do a three-peat, can they? But then this is the Roosters side. They just brought in Sonny Bill Williams in to come play the back end of the season. That's how loaded this side is. Mitchell Orbison, probably try and take him out of champion. Panthers don't have that much experience. Look, I think I'm going to chuck the Roosters into number 1 there. Panthers in second, purely for their season, but they still have that little bit of unproven, just have that little bit of doubt about them in the finals. But I think the Roosters, we know they're solid. Even in terms of the Storm, we know they're pretty solid. We know they can get into those later stages in the finals, where Panthers, like, are they going to choke under the pressure? They've been good when there's no pressure. There've been no crowds, not really anything. Being able to play some free-flowing football. Some very, very good football, Panthers, but just in terms of winning a comp, I feel like this is what this video is more about, winning a comp. I feel like Roosters, I'd still have them as favourites, but Panthers definitely definitely number 2. Storm, a chance. I feel like the Raiders, I feel like probably more likely in the average category in terms of winning a comp, but just because we know what they're capable of, we know their toughness from last year. They've still got some phenomenal players. Bateman's back. You got your two pretty solid halves. Whatever Jack Whiten's playing, I believe Raiders can win any game. He's that good. Jack Whiten is actually that good. Yeah, and Nickel Klotstad, they're resting players this week. They're definitely getting themselves prepared for the finals. And look, who knows? They're all, all they need to do is win a couple more games and they've won themselves a comp. They got super close last year. I thought they were no chance against the Roosters and they came within a whisker of doing it. So I definitely can't rule them out. And because they haven't been too bad this year, I'm going to put them in the good. The rest of it, I feel like kind of speaks for itself. Rabbitohs and Eels, top 8 sides. I think the Knights are the only top 8 side that I have outside of like the top 8, and I think that's just basically because look, that their side's gone. They're super injured. Every hooker they get, they usually play pretty decent, and then they turn to shit. So not turn to shit, they get injured, and then they have to find another one, and the same old story. They end up playing alright, and then they get injured. And just in terms of general injuries as well, I feel like the Knights are below average. Although Bradman Best is back this week, so maybe. But just the Titans' form as of late, I feel like they definitely could. They could trouble some of these sides. So I've got them in the average category. The rest of it, though, like Warriors show glimpses. They've just been the side of ruin by multis, essentially. Tigers, this is a case of sides that have definitely have good little showings, but haven't put it together throughout the whole season. And you've got the Bulldogs and Broncos. They really speak for themselves. Anyway, guys, I'd love to know, what do you think of this tier list? Is it shit? Is it good? I feel like there's going to be a lot of mixed opinions on this one, but I'd love to know what you think of it. And if you were to do one yourself, what would yours be? Leave in the comment section below, where would you have teams in your tier list? Anyway, guys, if you did happen to enjoy this video, make sure you go ahead and leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Also, make sure to follow me on all social media. It's on the screen right now. Also, my Snapchat as well, I should mention, is Mr. Luke on YT. So go ahead and add me on that. Anyway, guys, that's where I'm going to end the video. Hopefully you did enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.